Hey everybody, welcome to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and on behalf of Studio One Expert, I want to welcome you to the Beginner's Guide to Learning Presonus Studio One version 3. These short videos are intended to help the absolute beginner, whether you're coming from another DAW over to Studio One, or if this is the first time you've had any experience with any digital audio workstation. These videos are intended to help you get up and running quickly, give you the basic foundations and how to use the basic features of Studio One so you can start creating music in your home studio very quickly with no fuss and no muss. Be sure to check back to homerecordingmadeeasy.com as well as StudioOneExpert.com on a regular basis, as we'll be adding more videos to this series as time goes by. So in this video today, we're going to take a look at tracks and the different types of tracks that we can add in Studio One and what the differences are between them. So if we go over to our song page here, you can see this is an empty song session. This is what we created a few videos ago, what we've been working from up to this point. And I want to show you how you add some basic tracks. So let's start off with an audio track. How do we add an audio track? An audio track would be something where you're going to record, say, your guitar or your bass or a vocal. We want to go ahead and we want to add an audio track. So there's a couple of ways to do it. One of the ways you can do it is come up to the menu here and come to track, and you can go add tracks. Underneath the add tracks, you can see we have an add audio track selection mono, add audio track selection stereo, or we can add an instrument track, but let's just talk about the audio tracks for now. So we can either pick it from this menu here, or if you look over here to the right of the add tracks, we have the letter T, which is the shortcut on the keyboard, which is I typically like to use. So let's take a look at this. Or over here in the edit screen, if we right click with our mouse, we get the same menu options as we do up here in track, as I just showed you. So, or we can just hit the letter T on the keyboard. That's the quickest way to do it, and I highly recommend you start learning how to use the shortcuts if you don't know already the shortcuts in Studio One. So let's add the T, and when we press the letter T, we are going to get the Add Tracks dialog box here. So we get an opportunity to name the track. Let's name this guitar, because maybe we're going to add a guitar track first, let's say. Okay, we're going to have what type of track do we want to use. This is an instrument track. We don't want that. We want an audio track. Okay, and how many tracks do we want to add? You can add as many tracks as you want. We're just going to stick with one track for now. We can choose the color of the track just by clicking on that. Let's color it green. Okay, now down here in the bottom, we can format it. Do we want it mono? Do we want it stereo? More times than not, when you're talking about instruments such as vocals, guitar, bass, percussion tracks, things of that nature, typically they would be mono. If you were using like a keyboard or a synthesizer or something to that effect, you may go stereo. But in this case, we're just going to keep it mono. Now, under the preset, this gives you an opportunity that if you wanted to add some basic insert effects like EQ and compression, Presonus has created a bunch of kind of presets for you. So let's say you were going to record an acoustic guitar. We can always come down to the guitar folder and we can pick basic acoustic if we want. I'll show you what that does. Now the input is the input on your audio interface. Now in the last video we were using some drums as examples, and I renamed our inputs 1, 2, 3, and 4, kick, snare, overhead left, overhead right. Okay, so just know that kick is actually input 1 on my audio interface. If you're not sure how to set up your routing and your I/O in Studio One, go back and check the archive. There is a video dedicated just to that. So input 1 happens to be called kick in this setup. So I'm just going to do that. And our output here is the main outputs on our audio interface. Again, this is all set up in the I/O menu. Okay, so once we have all this, we're going to go ahead and click OK. And as you can see here, it added an audio track here in the edit screen, and it also added a track down here in the console view. Now you can tell that it's an audio track just by looking at this little icon here next to the label guitar. It looks like a little audio waveform. When we get to the instrument track, you'll see that it has a different icon, so you can tell the difference very quickly. If we come over here to our inspector, you can see that Presonus Studio One, because we picked that acoustic guitar preset in the dialog box, it added a compressor for us with a basic preset with some starting points for compression, as well as an EQ, and it added a basic EQ curve based on our acoustic guitar preset, which is pretty cool. So this is a way that you can kind of get up and running with some basic EQ and compression settings without having to think too difficult. Or if you're new to EQ and compression, it's always good to start with one of the presets. Now, so you'll see it here in the inspector. If we open up this little triangle down here in the mixer view, you see that here's our inserts. Again, our compressor and our EQ are right here. So they're here. And then they're also here in the inspector. And again, there is a video in this series talking about the inspector, and you can go check that out to get some more detail on the inspector. Okay, if you did not want to use a preset, you just didn't want to have any effects, you wanted to add them later on, you can always come up here to inserts and say remove all, and it'll take it out of here, out of the insert bank, as well as take it out of the inspector. Okay, so that is an audio track, a mono audio track. Now let's say we want to add an instrument track. Let's say we wanted to add some software drums to our session. Well, again, we can hit the letter T in our keyboard, or we can just right click here anywhere in this gray area, and we can say add an instrument track. Okay, and it's going to give us an instrument track without the dialog box that we just saw. Okay, but now we'll have to go out and manually add our own software instrument. Now if I just right click on this and say remove track, let's go back and hit the letter T, and let's get the dialog box again. Okay, so let's call this drums. Okay, this is what kind of track? Well, it's going to be an instrument track, okay, because we're going to add some software drums. Oops, instrument, okay. We're going to add one instrument track. We're going to change the color this time to red, okay. Our input here, we're going to leave it default, and our output, it's going to ask us, do we want to add a new instrument or do we want to have an existing instrument? Okay, we're going to take an existing instrument, okay, and we're going to get this little dialog box down here. If you drop down this triangle, whoops, I'm sorry, new instrument, and if you drop down this triangle, we are going to see all the software instruments that are loaded onto my system. So your list may look longer or shorter than this. It'll be all the Presonus instruments as well as any third party. Okay, because this is going to be a drum track, I'm just going to pick Easy Drummer because Easy Drummer is, you know, pretty well known, and it's one of the ones that I use a lot. So we're going to pick Easy Drummer as our instrument. Again, make sure the output is new instrument because the new instrument is going to be the Easy Drummer. And once we have this all set, we can hit OK. And now you can see we have a drum track here. And if you take a look at this icon, you can see it looks like a little piano roll. That's the icon for instrument track, as opposed to the guitar track, which has a little audio waveform. That's an audio track. Now, if I want to see my software instrument, which happens to be Easy Drummer, you can see here it has our Easy Drummer. We're just going to click on this little piano roll, and here comes Easy Drummer. Okay, so that is a quick way to be able to add an instrument track and then pick the software instrument that you want right from the dialog box. Okay, now the other way to do this from an instrument track, as I kind of alluded to a few seconds ago, was if I were to just again right click here, and let's say we're going to add instrument track. Okay, you can see now track 3 is an instrument track. If I click this little piano roll, this little icon, nothing's happening. There is no instrument track, no software instrument here. Okay, we're going to now manually add it because we didn't do it through the dialog box setup, okay? This takes a little bit longer to do it this way, but I just want to show you how to do it. So now we've added an instrument track. Well, now we have to go add an instrument. So we can either A, come down to this little triangle and it sees that we are already using Easy Drummer in the prior instrument track that we did, so we can choose Easy Drummer if we want to. But let's say this was going to be a keyboard track, and we were going to use a software instrument for our keys. Okay, so now that we've labeled this keys, we have to go get we got to go get the instrument, right? The software. So if we come over to our browser here, okay, we can go over to our Instruments tab. And as you can see up here, here is all the instruments that I have loaded onto my system. Here's all the Presonus ones. Here's all the Slate Digital ones, drummers. Here's the tune tracks where I have Easy Drummer and Easy Keys. So for this example, let's just take the Presonus Presence. That's a really cool, has a lot of cool keyboards in it. So we just take this, we just left click, and we drag it right onto this track. And here comes Presence. Oh, and we have to pick a preset. So now we have Presence on this instrument track that we just created. And if we come over to this little preset menu, we can go down to, let's say keyboards, right? Let's say we want a Rose Suitcase Chorus, whatever that's going to sound like. Let it load itself up. You can see that it's loaded itself up into the plugin. And I suppose that's what a Suitcase Chorus Hard Rhodes sounds like. Okay, so that's the other way to add a software instrument to an instrument track from scratch. So that is how you add audio tracks and instrument tracks. If you come back in the next video, we're going to take a look at some different types of tracks down in the console view and kind of explain the differences between those and how you would use them. So until the next video, this has been David with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. For more tips, tricks, concepts, techniques, and training around everything home recording, be sure to head out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. And as always, be sure to stop back at StudioOneExpert.com on a regular basis, as that is the online one-stop shop for everything you need to know from now till the end of time about Presonus Studio One. So until next time, this has been David with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and I will speak to you guys all soon. Take care.